it says we're going live, and then it'll take a second, and then it will say, you're live! Here we are! Welcome to our Dulcimoon Talk. This is number 36. I am Erin Mae, and I'm part of the Dulcimoon crew, and I'm joined today by Molly McCormack, who hails from Kentucky, which is dulcimer country, if ever there was dulcimer country. And Molly, I was reminiscing, I was thinking about when I first met you. And my first memory really with you is when I got assigned to learn how to teach a week-long festival by being your assistant teacher
Yeah.
at Colowee for the beginner Mountain Dulcimer Week track. And it was the first time I ever taught a week-long event. And you were my mentor teacher for that. And we did all this corresponding and hadn't really met and didn't really know each other. And I was a brand new baby teacher. And I have such fond memories of that.
I do too. I do too. I just remember being blown away by you, as a teacher and as a performer and just, as a person. So yeah, I remember that week well. That was fun.
It was sweet. It must have been about 2009 or 2010, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was when it was at Western Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Yep. Yeah. Sweet. Okay, so that bit of sweet reminiscing is there. But let's go back to the beginning of your story. So tell us how you discovered the dulcimer, how you got interested. And I see you have mountain dulcimers and hammer dulcimers behind you.
I
So
do. I do.
bring us into your story.
All right. So many years ago, I was with my family, and we went to an arts and crafts festival in Pewee Valley, Kentucky. And
What a great name.
yeah, it is a great name. And we were just walking around this arts and crafts festival, and there was a little small platform with three women sitting in a circle playing mountain dulcimer. And I had never seen a dulcimer before. I had recently started picking up my guitar again. I played guitar for a few years as a teenager, but never really, could play much without looking at some sort of paper. And it was always things like I wanted to play James Taylor or, some popular music or something like that. Anyway, so I saw these women playing and I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool instrument. And I like the sound of it. And so they had one vinyl album for sale, which I bought. And I took it home and listened to it. And then a few years later, I received a mountain
So
dulcimer.
so now I want to know who the women were.
Well, one of them actually was, I just lost my picture of you, and I
Oh,
don't know why, huh?
hmm.
Um, Oops, sorry.
Technical
I don't know how
difficulties.
to
It's
get it
okay.
back.
Technology is our friend. Maybe clicking on the Zoom icon will bring it back to the front. 'Cause sometimes something will pop up in front.
Yeah, it just
That's
made
weird.
everything really small on my screen, like on my computer.
Interesting.
I don't know, but you can see and hear me okay.
I
So
can see and hear you.
I don't need to
Yes.
see myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see a little window of
I don't
you.
know.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back. Who knows?
It looks good on the live stream from
Oh,
what I can
good.
see. So
That's
I think we're
great.
okay on this end anyway.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think it's Adobe that kind of takes over sometimes to wants
Mm-hmm.
to do
It
something
wants
to
to
my
boss everything else
computer.
around a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so one of the women, her name was Susie Hutchinson, and
Okay.
she and her husband Bob. Um, I'm not sure she was married to Bob at the time, but anyway, she was playing with these three women, and I didn't know them, and didn't get to know them until later.
Mm-hmm.
After I received a dulcimer, I didn't know any other dulcimer players. I didn't know
And this
anything
is
about
on mountain dulcimer at this
mountain
point, right?
dulcimer, right?
Hmm.
And the instrument that I received was made by a man named Warren May, who lives in Berea, Kentucky, and he's still building today. And it was
Yeah.
a beautiful cherry instrument. It had these beautiful sound holes that were the natural wood holes, and had the wooden pegs. It had
Yep.
no 6.5 fret. I didn't know
Yep.
I needed one. And it had an illegal Xerox copy of Gene Ritchie's Dulcimer book in the case.
Wow.
So that was my introduction to Gene Ritchie, was through that
Mhm.
illegal Xerox copy of uh,
Yep.
that book. And so I looked at the book, to learn how to tune the instrument, and
Mhm.
um, and I had a little, like I said, a little guitar playing background, so that wasn't totally foreign to me. But I didn't really know the music and any of the songs like Go Tell Aunt Rhody or anything like that. I just didn't know those songs.
Yeah.
And so I started listening to that album I had bought a few years beforehand. And then I would try to pick out the melody and play along with the album. And
Yeah.
never, never thought, oh, I'm learning by ear. I never thought that. I was just doing it out of desperation because I wanted to learn
Uh-huh.
how to play. And so I
Yeah.
learned Old Joe Clark and a couple of other tunes on that album. And then about a year later, my mom called me up one day and said, there's an article in the paper about a festival, and it's at Iroquois Park in Louisville, and you need to go to it. It's called Kentucky Music Weekend. And she said,
Mhm.
it says they have, performers and workshops and stuff like that. So I went to that, and that's where I met my people. I sat under a pavilion, and Fred Meyer, who was my first dulcimer teacher, actually, at
Uh-huh.
KMW. Fred and Leo Kretzner were sitting under a pavilion, and they were doing what was called a workshop, which was more similar to a demonstration. But the other people that were there had their dulcimers on their laps, so we were listening to Fred and Leo trade things back and forth and play a few tunes. And then at the end, Fred said, "Why don't we play something together with everybody?" And so they decided to play Old Joe Clark. And I had never played with other dulcimer players. I
Yeah.
didn't know what sound was going to be like. And I think I levitated. I think I
Oh.
was floating by the end of that session. And I
Yeah.
just knew that I had to have more. I
Mhm.
knew
Mhm.
that this was where it was just such a special moment for me that I remember it very well. And a woman sitting next to me, her name is Mary Lou Vaughn, and Mary Lou was a member of the Louisville Dulcimer Society, and so they had a little table set up so that you could be a member, and I joined and quickly just became desperate for. They only met once a month, but they had board meetings at someone's house, and quickly I wasn't even on the board, but I found out that they jammed after the board meeting. So I would go to the board meetings and just wait, until they were done with their business. Let's play, let's play, let's play. And and some of the people there, well, Janie Robertson was a big influence to me. Janie passed away a few years ago, but she was a dulcimer player, a banjo player, and a singer. And she and I ended up, just having this wonderful partnership of music together. And she really taught me almost every song that I know on the dulcimer. She was the newsletter editor for the Louisville Dulcimer Society for many years, and now I've taken the reins of that, and I feel like Janie sits on my shoulder and tells
Oh.
me things to put in the newsletter sometimes, or ways to
Yeah.
do that. So anyway, Janie was a huge influence in my life, and just such a giving person, and just always so willing to sit knee to knee with me and teach me tunes. And
Mhm.
so that was a big deal.
Mhm. I love how you describe not only did you find people who played your instrument, but it's like these are my people, and that feeling of like community and connection,
Yes.
it seems to be really baked into the fabric of people who play dulcimer are
Yeah. Yeah.
are people who value that community and connection and are really good at making people feel welcome.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's really beautiful and magical. It's one of my favorite things about being a dulcimer
Yes.
player is like the
Yes.
instrument is great, but the people,
The
like you
people.
don't understand how wonderful the people are
Yeah.
who play this instrument.
Yeah, that's really true. That is, I have just met the best people and have so many musical sisters and brothers. You know, they're part of my family. I mean,
Yeah.
when I have events in my life, sad ones and happy ones, I want to share with them.
Mhm.
You know, what the good things and the sad things that might be going on in my life, and I always get support for whatever I'm doing. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a beautiful instrument to provide that for people, and I think people that don't know anything about the dulcimer are really missing out.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah, they
And
really
then
are.
there's always this little part of me that's like, if it becomes more mainstream, will we lose that
Yeah,
magic of the community that we have because not that many people know about it, you know? Like we can still really trust each other and we
yeah,
can really be open and we share a lot. And is that because it's not mainstream? But also I want more people to experience all of it. So,
right,
yeah.
right,
Mhm.
yeah.
Um, so I'm curious about because I know you sing a lot and you sing a lot with your dulcimer.
Mhm.
So where does the voice and the dulcimer intersect? Did it for you? Were you singing from the very beginning, or was that what did that look like for you?
Well, so yeah, not really. I mean, I think I never had any musical singing, you know, no specific training or anything like
Mhm.
that. I always
Mhm.
loved to sing, but never was in any kind of a real formal choir or anything like that until after I married and had kids. And then I actually sang in the folk group at our church for a little while,
Uh-huh.
uh, and and just did it because I, you know, connected to the music. And then when I got a dulcimer, pretty early on, someone from the Dulcimer Society, well, Henrietta Fraser is her name. Henrietta and Vera were wonderful influences in my life, as well as Janie. And was a singer too. So they showed me how to play chords,
Yep.
and then I realized, oh, I can strum my dulcimer and play chords. And so I remember sitting in a jam session, and Henrietta she was a force. If you were new and she didn't know you, she would say, okay, what do you know? You know, we'd be sitting in a circle with a whole bunch of people, but she would single you out and say, what do you know? And I knew a song called June Apple that I actually had learned from that recording. And I would
Yeah.
sing the Wish I Was a June Apple, you know, part of that verse. And
Hmm.
so I did that. She asked me what I knew, and I said, well, I know June Apple, you know, and so I did it and I sang it. And she said, where have you been hiding? And that was
Oh,
like such an amazing compliment to me
yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know, I didn't know if I sounded any good. And there were, you know, but that was really encouraging to me. And then
Yeah.
Janie and I, once we started playing together, she sang harmony, and we always had this joke that she could only do harmony and I could only do melody because we would try to trade parts, and in the
Uh-huh.
middle of the song, just go back to our regular comfort zone. And
Uh-huh.
so yeah, so I got lots of experience with singing with Janie. And then of course influences of, for example, Jean Ritchie, of course, when I first
Mhm.
saw her on stage at
Mhm.
Kentucky Music Weekend, uh, just the way that she sang and shared stories in between, and just the repertoire that she sang, and all of that captured me. And then I saw Susan Trump on
Mm-hmm.
stage singing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw Maddie McNeil.
Oh,
Uh,
yep.
and so eventually I, got a hammer dulcimer and then started singing with it. So, I have so many wonderful female influences in my life and as male as well. But, as far as like the female singer, uh,
Mm-hmm.
those and Nancy Barker actually wrote her own music and sang with a group called Kentucky Standard, and they would perform
Yep.
every year. So I got lots of experience singing, even though in the jam sessions there wasn't a whole lot of singing. It was mostly, instrumental, as it is many times um, still today, at least in areas where I go. I'm
Yeah.
always trying to get people to sing.
Yeah, it's a lot more instrumental focused, it feels like. And it's interesting because I have worked a lot more on singing in the last like 5+ years. Um, but I was a really uncomfortable singer. But always one of my favorite things to do with my dulcimer was accompany other people who were singing. I love playing backup on the dulcimer. I think it's
Yeah,
so fun.
yeah, yeah.
And then finding my own voice eventually has been I feels like a harder part of the journey than learning how to use the dulcimer as a accompaniment voice. But
I came from a school teacher standpoint, and I would take my instruments to school,
Mhm.
and the kids they'll sing. There's no
Yep.
in especially younger children, they love to sing, and they just want to be use their voice in that way. And so
What
uh,
grade did you teach?
I taught fourth and fifth grade for 21 years, but I also taught handicapped children when I first started teaching,
Hmm.
and then who were also visually impaired. And then I ran a preschool for a few years, and then I actually taught music, which I'm not a certified music educator, but I got hired to do that for a couple of years and
Uh-huh.
taught the kids how to play penny whistle and dulcimer because I didn't know how to do anything else.
That's
And
amazing.
so, but also if you're gonna, you have to demonstrate songs to the children if you want them to sing. And I never had any resistance about that with the kids. It was,
Mhm.
but then when you teach adults, it's a little different story. People have resistance or memories of maybe or feelings that they're not good enough. And I think that that is something that I've thought about, like, why didn't I have that feeling? Because I didn't come from a musical family.
Uh-huh.
My parents, neither one played an instrument. Nobody in my family really played an instrument, but
Yeah.
they loved music. And so they would turn on the stereo and we would sing along, and that was just kind of part of it. And then I have earliest memories of my grandmother, my mom's mother, in the kitchen, and I would hear her little country voice coming out of the kitchen singing On Top of Old Smoky. And that memory,
Uh-huh.
I think,
Uh-huh.
that was informative to me, that's what you do when you're working, or
Yeah.
you're just doing your daily chores. And
Hmm.
so now I have, I sing and whistle all the time
Yeah.
around the house when I'm cleaning
Yeah.
or doing anything. And I have a 7-year-old grandson, and when I go visit him, I hear him whistling and humming and singing, and it's like, oh, that's so wonderful. And
Yeah.
to just want to do that for yourself,
Mhm.
because that's
Mhm.
where it has to start, is
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
want to do it for yourself.
Hmm. So, how did you make the transition into teaching and performing with the dulcimer?
Yeah, well, so after I, played with the Dulcimer Society for a few years, I got a little performance experience there. And then my friend Janie got a call from someone locally who was in a play production. They were getting ready to do a play production of this play called Hillbilly Women, which was a play written by Elizabeth Stearns. And it wasn't a musical, but it was a play about 7 women who were from Appalachia. And told their stories, and then music was sprinkled in. So they were looking for someone who could accompany the performers and singers that played mountain dulcimer and guitar. And I had really had very little experience, but I got the job. And of course, it was like a whole bunch of performances and a month-long worth of work of 6 days a week of practice, and I made $100. But I gained so much. I gained so much confidence and knowledge about how to accompany other people. I had to learn how to transpose, because the singers would say, oh, I can't sing it in the key it's written in. And I didn't initially. After the first day of practice, I didn't know what the heck to do. So I had to come home and figure out how to transpose something into a better key. And then they asked me to do a 30-minute pre-show of dulcimer music.
Wow.
And so I had just, I had bought Gene Ritchie's Black Waters recording and was really getting heavily into all her material. And there was a song that she had written called Mountain Born and Country Gentle that really seemed like it was, just told the story of these women, as well as Black Waters and Ellen in Don't Stop Here Anymore, all those wonderful songs that she had written. And I thought, that's really the music I should be doing for the pre-show. And so I reached out to her. I sent her a letter, actually, and she called me on the phone. And so I'm cooking dinner, and I have little kids running around, and my husband answered the phone and said, it's for you. And I answered, and she said, hi, Molly, this is Gene Ritchie. And I was like, I couldn't speak. And she started laughing. She thought she started laughing. And so anyway, she granted me permission to do the songs for that production and for the pre-show. And then she told me that she said, are they still using my songs in that production? So I think she had maybe written some. And I think Mountain Born and Country Gentle was in the show initially. But by the time it came, that it had come out of New York, because I think 1979 was the first time it was ever performed. And I've been looking online to see if I could find evidence of her songs being in the show, because I think she told me that. And but anyway, Cy Khan had written some of the music, and then some of it was traditional, like Amazing Grace and things like that were also included in the production. But that whole experience just gave me, I had to perform solo for 30 minutes. I'm singing Gene Ritchie's songs. And it was it was a small theater that probably seated 50 or 60 people, but that was perfect. It was so perfect for me. And I remember one evening, as I'm doing the pre-show, there was a woman that came in, and I started singing Black Waters, and she started to cry. And that was a moment for me, that how powerful music can be. Even when you're not playing it and singing it yourself, you're just listening to someone else sing it. And so that whole experience it's a very strong memory to me. Every time I perform, I try to perform it as, any songs that I do, just as honestly as I can. And I love performing. I learned to love performing. I used to be so nervous about performing for other people, but I've had so many wonderful encouragers along the way. Jamie and I performed at the Central Ohio Dulcimer Festival Folk Festival one year. Jerry Rockwell, actually, he and Ron Ewing. I went to the festival just as a participant, and I met Ron, and Ron had the little dulcimet sitting on his table, and I came by the table and jamming with him. And at the time I was really into Celtic music, and so he was teaching me all kinds of cool tunes on the little dulcimet. Then of course I had to buy one, And I didn't know it, but Jerry had been kind of observing me from afar. And after the festival, while as I was leaving the festival, I went up to thank him for, gosh, that was such a great festival. And he said,
Mhm.
I've been watching you. And he gave me one of his recordings and said, now you take these tunes home and you make them your own. And that was another moment for me.
Yep.
I had
Yep.
didn't know that I could do that or that it was okay to
Mhm.
do that. I was
Right.
doing it probably, but I didn't know, I didn't know I was doing it. And then I thought, oh gosh,
Mhm.
and then so a few years later, then Jerry asked me to perform at the festival. That's where I first met Steve Seifert. He was, I think, 20 or 21 years old at the time.
Mhm.
And I performed in front of a big crowd of people that actually paid to come in to see. And I was just so scared,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I remember Jerry stood off stage and I could hear him cheering us on. And I think that that's something that I try to do for other people is cheer them on when I see them doing things,
Mhm.
uh, whether it's the first time or they've been doing it many times, just to show appreciation
Yeah.
for. And Maddie McNeil did that for me as well. I've had a lot of people in my life who have just kept saying, yeah, yeah, do more of that, do more of that. So thank
Yeah.
goodness, thank
Yeah.
goodness for those people.
Agreed. Agreed. And I can sort of start to, as you're talking about those I can like think in my own mind like there was
Mhm.
a moment like that with this person. There was a moment like that. There was a moment like that with this, with the person who said would just meet you in that exact space where it just sticks.
Mhm.
It's like on that day, the stickiness of the thing they said, we had the Velcro to receive it and for it um to impact us in our going forward, which is so beautiful.
It really is. I think that there's not enough of that in the world sometimes, especially when it comes to music, people, I get, and I'm sure you experience this too, when you have new people come in and they've never played the instrument before, there's a lot of anxiety involved in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and, and you can kind of make or break a student at that time. You can make or break a musician at that time. If you do or say something that is, um, not the right thing that they need to hear. I mean, that's with any
Yeah.
student. You learn that
Yeah.
when you're teaching school. Um, so I try to be very, very conscious and careful about the way I approach people because some people don't want to even have any attention drawn to them.
Yep.
They're just
Yep.
like, let me sit here, just ignore me. Uh,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
other times, people they need to hear just a little verbal. Wow, that was great.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Doesn't have to be a big production. It just is a little word here and there sometimes can really make a huge difference in someone's life. And I know I've had that in mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about what you're currently doing with the dulcimer. Where do you find yourself these days? What are you up to?
Yeah. So I'm doing a good bit of teaching at the Louisville Folk School.
Hmm.
And that organization has been around for about 10 years, I think now. And
Okay.
I taught early on. And then, because I had a day job teaching school, and then with the pandemic and all of that, I
Yeah.
couldn't do anything except just survive and teach school. But
Uh-huh.
since I've retired back in 2021, then they invited me back to teach dulcimer again. And that's been an exciting way for me to reach out to people that maybe I wouldn't normally meet. I've had classes, beginner classes with 25-year-olds. And so it is attracting a population of people that are younger, which is exciting to me. Not that I don't love
Yeah.
to teach students of any age, but it's always exciting to know that if you can reach someone that's young, then the dulcimer is going to continue to survive for many, many years in a healthy way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when I taught that group of students, they actually asked me to teach them things by Gene Ritchie, which was like just made me so
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah,
But
it's so interesting because every once in a while I'll talk to someone who's older and they're worrying about the dulcimer getting passed on and thinking the only way that we're going to be able to pass on the dulcimer is by like teaching people to play rock music or contemporary
mm,
pop music or whatever. And my experience is a lot of the people who are drawn to the dulcimer are also drawn to the obscurity, And so
yes,
they're drawn to the folk songs and they're
yeah,
drawn to the stories of ancient history and
yeah,
murder ballads and how does the music and the culture connect. And
yes,
I find that it's actually my like 50 and 60-year-old students who are like, "Can I learn rock songs?" And
yes,
it's the like 20 and 30-year-old students who are like, "Will you teach me the folk ballads?" And I'm
yes,
like, "Yes, let's do it."
yes. Yes, that's so true. That's, a few years ago, my son, who is an artist, he lives in New York, he came home for Christmas, and his birthday is right after Christmas. And I said, do you want to go somewhere on your birthday? Just like having a birthday at Christmas time is kind of a drag, and so we
Yeah.
always try to do something special. And he said, you knew Jean Ritchie, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I did. I got to know her. And he said, actually, I want to go to where was she born? And I said, Viper, Kentucky. He said, can we go there?
Aw.
And so I called up John because Jean had already passed at the time.
Hmm.
I called up her son, John, and ask permission for us to go to Viper because Jean and George are buried there along with their other family members, and ask if it was okay if we went to visit her grave. And I taught my son how to play Shady Grove and Black Waters, and we sat at graveside and sang those songs to Jean.
Giving me
And,
goosebumps.
nothing would have made me, I just kept thinking, this is more like my birthday. This
Hmm.
is, didn't seem like, but that was really something my son wanted to learn to do. And I
Hmm.
wanted to connect with that part of the
Hmm.
music, which I just
Yeah.
think is so beautiful. I love that when people are able to appreciate, younger people are able to appreciate the value of all those beautiful old songs that we don't want forgotten, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many lovely, beautiful old songs.
Yeah.
I get lost in like
Yeah.
Gene Ritchie's book or the Lomax collections. I can just spend
Yes.
hours, Ruth Crawford Seeger's books, just
Yes.
flipping through these old songs, and so many of them. I don't have any idea. I've
Yep.
never heard them. I've never heard a recording of them. Yeah, it's pretty
We're
magical.
we're so lucky now that we can search things, online, and that
Yeah.
so many things have been preserved that way. I frequently go down the rabbit hole just, looking for new things, or hearing a snippet or reading something about something and thinking, "Oh, I need to look up that version of that ballad," or
Yeah.
have students that want to learn a ballad, then I start looking at all the many versions of that ballad, and how am I going to translate or decide, what teach
Yes.
them. Yeah, that's the
Uh-huh.
the angst of being a teacher is, all the different versions, and
Yeah.
and making sure people know that there are more versions than Molly's version. There's so many
Hmm.
wonderful versions of tunes out there.
Do you have favorite like websites or resources that you go back to regularly for doing that digging?
There's digital traditions, which I think, I'm not sure it's fully active, but the website is mudcat, mudcat
Oh,
dot
yep.
org. And
Yep.
actually, you can get on there and read comments that Jean Ritchie wrote many years ago. Her
Uh-huh.
username was KY Trad, KYTRAD. And if you Google or go to that website and put that in the search engine, or even just put her name, you can read her comments that she wrote about things, because she would chime in about the history of tunes, and people would ask about things, and I hear her voice speaking. When I read that, I hear her speaking to us, which is so beautiful. I love that website.
I knew about Mudcat, but I didn't know that snippet. So
Yeah,
I'm really glad I asked
yeah,
that question.
yeah. Yeah, it was a blog.
Definitely.
So you could
Yeah.
ask a question to the group. And
Hmm.
I'm not sure that's active anymore. Sometimes I try to get on there and I can't get through to the website. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. But I use that one and have used it a
Hmm.
lot in the past to look up songs, because they have many traditional songs. They have lyrics and they have melodies.
Hmm.
For things that are copyrighted, they usually only print melodies, or sometimes someone will, on the blog, they'll put like a chord progression down
Hmm.
when someone would ask about it. But it was yeah, I have been reading a lot of Jean's comments actually in the last few days about just different things, and I love that.
That's amazing. I'm a little bit jealous because I never got to meet Jean. I've only heard the secondhand stories.
I feel
I will.
very lucky that I did, get to meet her and
Mhm.
be on stage with her and talk to her, and even have a few emails from her that I've saved. But she still can speak to you, Erin, through just her music. And I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah.
was a special person. She really was. Yeah.
She's definitely the dulcimer godmother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Is there anything I've missed that you want to talk about?
Um, well, I want to mention a few people that really
Sure. Yeah.
influenced my teaching, if that's okay. Uh,
Please.
and I mentioned Susan Trump, um, being an encourager, and also just
Mhm.
seeing her perform. But Susan is an amazing teacher, and just as doctors are terrible patients, I've heard that before. I think sometimes teachers are terrible students. And so whenever I'm taking a class, I'm always kind of thinking about how teachers are approaching things, and either
Mhm.
appreciating how they're doing things, or like criticize, doing my own little critic in my head, like, why don't they do it this way?
Uh-huh.
Um, anyway, Susan continues to be an amazing dulcimer teacher, and really encouraged me a lot as I was starting that journey, as well as Tull Glazener, and those
Mm.
people that,
Yeah.
have had workshops and things with Tull. I mean, Tull he's the quintessential teacher and arranger,
Mhm.
and he and
Mhm.
I have been very close and performed a lot over the years. And
Yeah.
so when I first started taking workshops with him, I really learned so much about how to break down tunes, and how to share
Mhm.
that knowledge with people
Yeah.
in a way that you can do it in an hour. If you're teaching an hour workshop,
Right.
how are you going to teach this complex piece to people? And I think Tull is
He's He
really a
strikes me as
master.
just really a gentle teacher too.
Hmm.
Like he's so
Hmm.
gentle at bringing every person
Yes.
into into the space together and creating that feeling of like safety.
Yeah. Very
Hmm.
much. Very much. Yeah, I think Rob Brereton is another person that I actually was his when I first met him at Boone, back when um, at Appalachian State University, where they had the Boone Festival, and Lois Hornbostel. Uh, she's written so many wonderful books. I mean, there's just a whole lot of people. I got to meet Betty Smith and Janita Baker and Bill Taylor and Phyllis Gaskins and Neil and Colleen Walters, just people that became lifelong friends, but also models to me of how to be teachers and performers and share music. And so I think that when I'm teaching, I am the dulcimer teacher as well as the elementary teacher. I am the teacher today because of all of those wonderful people that taught me how to be a good teacher. And it wasn't just, elementary school, although lately I do have a new musical endeavor. I'm a jazz diva now. And I have to laugh about that a little bit just because, I call myself like the granny jazz diva. So my husband is a drummer, and he was working with a jazz guitarist, and they were looking for a vocalist, and they had trouble finding one. And so I came down and I said, well, I can sing Summertime. I know that one. So I did. And so then they were like, okay, well, what else do you know? Well, I knew Moon River and Dream a Little Dream of Me. I knew a handful of tunes. And long story short, our guitarist, Barry Glick, has taken me under his wing. He gives me homework every week of, hey, learn this tune. And so that, just being a student again has been so good for me.
Yeah.
To be a learner. I mean, not that don't learn all the time from everything that I'm doing, but to really.
But when you have like deliberate space and homework and.
Well, and to have feelings of insecurity as, I don't know, I'm not a jazz singer. I've been singing for years, but I never thought about my voice being an instrument in the way that it is that a jazz singer is, an instrument, and using it that way. And so, of course, I've never been breathing the right way. And, now I have to concentrate on how I'm breathing. What?
Yeah. In college, I had a moment because I just thought you either are a singer or you're not a singer, and that's it. And you sing the way you sing, and that's it. And I knew people took voice lessons, but I just figured that was to learn songs, not to like change how you sing. That was just my understanding of it. And I said that to one of my fellow classmates who was much more a singer than me. And he was like, well, how many hours have you spent practicing the mountain dulcimer? And I was like, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours. And he said, how many hours have you spent practicing singing? And I said, that's a thing you can practice?
Yep.
And he said, yeah, so get back to me when you've practiced that many hours on singing and let me know if you're not a singer. And I was like, so put in my place about that.
Yeah, I think, we're all born singers. And I've always told people that in the dulcimer world, but then of course when I get up in front of a jazz band, I'm like, I'm not really here. I'm really
was I born
not really a jazz singer. And so I've had to get over myself and practice like all the time, practice all the time, and learn the songs as well as I can learn them, and continue to learn, these like the different progressions and scales and all of that stuff, which I'm still very new in learning, but it's exciting to take on something new like that. I mean, it's been scary, but I love it. I love that challenge.
And I'm sitting here thinking, oh, I'm excited to see how that will affect your dulcimer playing too, because it will certainly cross over. Everything you learn musically in one sphere crosses over.
Right.
And
that's right. Well, I got to be part of the blues day that,
Yes.
yeah, that you all did. And that was so fun. One of my favorite parts of being part of that festival was getting to listen in and see how other teachers like Little Rev and Bing and
Mhm.
DJ and Steve, how they taught it, how,
Yeah.
because when I first even thought about doing the blues, Jerry Rockwell said, well, first you need to get Robert Johnson's recording of Come On Into My Kitchen.
That's one of my
And I didn't know
favorites.
who Robert Johnson was, and I'd never heard that song. And so,
Uh-huh.
a collection of his things and listened to it. And so much of learning really is just, especially when it has to do with music, is listening. So I think that that's always my advice for people when they want to learn to play an instrument or learn to sing is, find things that you want to imitate and listen, 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 listen. It's so
Yeah.
important to do that, to listen to the masters. I listen to Ella Fitzgerald. I listen to Billie Holiday. I listen to Anita O'Day all day long. I listen to what they're doing and how they phrase things. And I know that you're right. I think it will eventually, and I think it already probably has
Yeah.
infused how I perform when I'm singing with the dulcimer, even if it's
Mhm.
unconscious.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm
Yeah.
breathing better than I used to. I don't know.
Breathing is so surprisingly hard.
It is. When you have to think about it, it really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Well, Molly, it's been so amazing to visit with you for this time. Thank you for telling us all your stories. I know I love and know that our people who come back and watch this are gonna really especially love all of your Gene Ritchie stories and that connection. And so just thank you for sharing this part of your life with us. And I can't wait
It
till the
was
next time I hang out.
my pleasure, my honor. Thank you so much for allowing me that
Molly,
opportunity.
your website is, tell us your website again.
Yeah, www.mollymccormack.com.
Amazing. Okay, so go find more of Molly there, and we will look forward to connecting with you again soon. Thanks,
Thank you
Molly.
so much. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, DJ.